Brian.
Hey, who's that?
Monica.
Hey, Monica, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great. Congratulations on your retirement from the board.
Thank you.
So I'm coming to Miami. We're gonna have coffee or better, and we're gonna chat.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Are you planning on having a trip over here?
I may have a deposition down there in a couple of weeks, so I will swing by.
Really? Oh, give me a call. I would love to see you.
I will do that. So I just checking in because you're an old pro at this. Can you see the Manuscript Society screen?
Yes, I can see. See. It says the Manuscript Society. Yes, I see it.
Good. And is my image up on the screen as well in the corner somewhere?
Yes, it's right on top of the text, right on top. It's like a window on top.
Got it. I was hoping you'd be there because I know people are going. I always needed somebody to be able to see I can't see what everybody else sees a lot of times, so that's great.
Okay.
So much. How's life in Miami?
Well, it's so hot. You know, my hobby is gardening. It's very difficult to garden, but we were really lucky. We lucked out on the hurricane this time.
Oh, I know. Oh my gosh, it was just too crazy, huh? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But boy, in the Bahamas, it's just horrible.
Oh, it is terrible, isn't it? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's really, really bad. Yeah.
Wow.
And how's it going with you? Well, I always.
Oops, did I lose you? I'm sorry. There we go. Unmute all. There we go. I'm sorry. I think I muted you for a second there. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. And Nancy's good. Everybody's good.
Nancy retired.
Oh.
Retired. Wow. She's at the beach tonight. We went down for a couple of days to Jersey Beach. So she's hanging down with some of my friends from high school and spending some time with them. So she's doing just fine. Thanks for asking.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
That's good. Great. And if anybody wants to unmute themselves and say hello, you can certainly do that. We're also talking about how to raise your hand and do whatever. I see Sharon's unmuted herself. Sharon, you there? And Michael's there, and Brian, I see. Zoe, Bill's here. Ren's here. We got a lot of people here. It's great. It's got a big crowd. We're going to start up in about a minute, and we'll give everybody.
In other sessions, you could see who else is attending, but I can't see it on this one.
Yeah, we've left that off. We're going to have over 100 people on this webinar, so we thought it was easy just from a standpoint of managing all the data going back and forth to be able to not have everybody see everybody else. Who knows what everybody's doing at 8 o'clock? Somebody's driving in a car or flying an airplane in the background there. I'm not sure what that is. So we're about 8 o'clock here. I am going to mute everybody right now, and we'll see, and we'll get started. If you have any questions or concerns, you can text my cell phone, which is 908-256-6119. 908-256-6119. 908-256-6119. My name is Brian Kathenes. I'm a member of the Manuscript Society and a member of the Board of Trustees and the Executive Committee. Been a member of this organization for more than 30 years. And a while back at our board meeting up in Boston, we were talking about ways to encourage folks to learn more about manuscripts and to spread some knowledge and information. I've done presentations like these for many, many years for the International Society of Appraisers. You heard Monica Fidel, who is a board member there. She was talking about it a little bit. And I'm also the managing partner at National Appraisal Consultants. Been in the autograph world and manuscript world and rare book world for over 40 years and was the first director of education for the Universal Autograph Collectors Club and involved in the ethics committee and a lot of things with the International Society of Appraisers. So what I'm going to share tonight with you are just some of the things that stand out for me in my 40 or almost 50 years involved in this business that you'll come across during the normal course of either appraising or collecting or buying and selling if you're a dealer. If it's just something you have an interest in, you see something at a flea market or something that comes up at a local country auction, you may want to take a look and see what's going on there, and you may be able to come up with a way to make things a little different. If you have questions, there's a way to raise your hand. And if you look on your little dashboard there, you're going to see a little hand. And if you click on the hand will go up or the hand will come down. And if I see your hand go up, I'll do my best to take a break in the action. Why don't you just give that a try? See if you can raise your hands. Everybody give their hand a raise so we can see if it works. Oh, there we go. Yeah, people are getting it. Oh, all the hands are going up. This is excellent. That's great. And what I'll do is I'll unmute. You have a question, you could do that. So put your hands down again, click your hand again. It's kind of counterintuitive. It doesn't necessarily know when your hand's up or down, but you'll figure it out, and I'll reach out to you too. If you have questions, there's a spot to type in your questions, and you can just put in a question there. I may not see them as I kind of cram all this into an hour, a little over an hour full of information, but I'll do my best to do that. If there's a chat and you want to chat with each other, you can chat with other members there and all the people that are part of the webinar here too. So we're gonna, with this going, we're about at 3 minutes after 8. We're gonna kind of move forward here. I'm gonna click all of my dashboards on so I can see who's here. We got people from all over the place. And I wanna make sure my dashboard, I'm sharing the right screen, and I think we'll be good to go. So with that in mind, let's fire it off. First off, big thanks to the Manuscript Society, to all the members, to the trustees that allowed me to be able to put this together. They're doing a great job, and we'll tell you how to get in touch with the Manuscript Society. If you are a member, that's great. If you're not a member, we'll talk a little bit about it, and we'll let you know how you can listen to this webinar again and again if you choose, and how to pick up a 22-page follow-up handout sheet that's available too. So it's called Identifying Phonies, Fakes, and Forgeries. We're going to talk about autographs, manuscripts, historical documents, and books. And it's probably a little easier than you think. So with that in mind, first thing you need to know is what the proper equipment is. This is not the proper equipment. You don't need a microscope, and you don't need any equipment that you see right there. That's a lab that I used to work in when I was in the cosmetics industry as a chemical engineer. You don't need an oscilloscope with fancy electronics or things like that. But here's what you do need. You do need common sense. And like my daddy says, common sense just ain't so common. But if you can think about this and have a logical approach to identifying phonies, fakes, and forgeries, you'll be able to spot the bad ones and be able to figure out which ones are the good ones. You need two eyes. One of them should be fairly good. You've got to be able to see fairly well. You need one fully functioning brain, and the key word here is fully functioning or fully functional. Some kind of magnifying device is great, and that big giant magnifying glass that that you see Sherlock Holmes using is probably not the one you want. But you can buy a jeweler's loupe or a small pocket magnifier from coin shops or a stamp shop or jewelry shop. You can find them online. They're all over the place, including on Amazon. But that'll help you get close enough. And the way you use those, some people will put them close to the paper and keep their eye away. You want to get that thing really close to your eye so that you can get the paper or the document or the thing you're looking at close to you. You got to have a desire to learn. So I think you should get out a pad of paper and get a pencil and scribble down all kinds of notes if you want. If you need to take a screenshot of something, you can take a screenshot. I ask you just don't publish it anywhere else. This is just for you tonight. And you need a little bit of patience. One is patience with me, and the other is patience with taking the time to learn a little bit. So hope we're doing okay here. I'm going to look and see if anybody has posted any questions or have any problems. Someone says, I'm just listening from Lima, Peru. Peru? Oh, Jorge, that's great. You're going to probably get the award for tuning in from farthest around the world. So nice that you joined us, and so nice to see that you're with us too. So there we go. Moving right along. And maybe just a little bit of direction. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be your compass tonight. It's going to help you orient the map and lead you through what appears to be something that's very challenging. But if you know just a couple of things about it, you'll be able to knock through this in no time. The first thing I wanted to identify, and you've seen these all over the place, these are probably the easiest forms and the most commonly mistaken misidentified signature. And it's a printed signature. It's actually an engraved signature, and these are 19th century engravings. They come out of the 1800s, and they are actually, it's paper that's pressed into an engraved plate, and that plate has been covered with ink. And under great pressure, they squeeze the paper and the plate together, and the ink transfers. During that transfer, that paper is pushed into the grooves and the indentations on that steel plate, and it's usually a steel plate. There are copper plates. I'm talking about probably steel engravings. And the way you can tell is if you rub your finger over the engraving itself, it feels rough. If you rub your finger over the signature, you'll feel that it's raised, and I call that the feel of steel. Most of them come out of Appleton Encyclopedia of American Biography. That's just a picture of one little section of my library. And by the way, if you want to do research, these old references from the 19th century have a lot of names in it that you won't find on the web. Over the years, they would take names out and add new names in. So you're going to find some really obscure people if you're doing some research on a document or a manuscript. These old books are great. Libraries, some of them still have them. Folks in our county library, when they're looking for something and the librarians can't seem to find it, they tell them to give Brian a call, and we open our library up for people to come take a look. So Appleton's is a great place. So this is a typical example of Appleton Encyclopedia of biography. It's an 1894 edition, and that is a steel engraving. It's actually every little line and every dark spot was actually incised into a piece of steel or into a piece of copper. These are steel engravings. And you can see it says Appleton on it. This is John Quincy Adams' signature, but it's not a real signature. And if you look at that A in Adams, the first A, the capital A, you can actually see it looks like there's some ink voids along the vertical parts of that signature. Normally when a quill pen was used, whether it be a steel-tipped pen or a true quill pen, the ink will flow to the outside and not necessarily to the center of the line. The engravers were so good at that, they can actually replicate that look. But if you rub your finger over this, you're going to feel that it's raised, and that's the key that this is not real. The bad guys out there, we're going to talk a lot about the bad guys, is the bad guys out there will put this will cut the signature out, they'll frame it with another picture or something different than the engraving, and they'll cut out the Appletons or mat out the Appletons at the bottom, and when it's under glass, can't tell. This is magnifying pretty large, depending upon how large your computer screen is. You can see every little detail of that, and that looks a lot like a real signature. The ink color and some of the other characteristics aren't right, but look for the feel of steel. Here's my number one tip. If you see anything or any kind of autograph signature that you're concerned about, assume it's not real until you can prove otherwise. Assume it's not real until you can prove otherwise. Other printed signatures, this is Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan. Their printed signatures have a flat look, meaning there's no real character or depth to the signature. And I don't mean physical depth, but the viewing of ink on paper. Ink on paper with a real signature varies in intensity, varies in width and thickness. This has the same ink intensity throughout. It's the same color, and usually it's the same color as the printed text that goes with it. This is an invitation or a thank you letter. Ronald and Nancy Reagan sent those out at the end of their term. They're printed, and they sent out literally millions of these. Here's a picture of Jackie Kennedy, and it says I'm going to move this out of the way, see what it says. It's got a little dedication on it. Here we go. It's got a little dedication on it with best wishes, Jacqueline Kennedy. It is printed in the photograph. So it wasn't printed after. The original photograph was signed by her, and then they made copies and copies and copies of that. Again, same ink intensity. There's a better look at it there. And you'll notice that if you took a flashlight and you put the flashlight on it at an angle, kind of almost so the light runs parallel to the paper, that's called raking light because the light rakes over the paper, you'll see there's no indentations at all. When someone would sign, whether it be with a fountain pen or a ballpoint pen or even a Sharpie, there's a slight indentation, and you'll be able to see that on the paper. That's not here. A lot of printed signatures. I see these about once a month. Someone's sending one to me asking about it. They're just not real. And there's John Kennedy is the same too, and we'll talk more about them in just a little bit. Take it out of the frame. If you buy something and you're not sure and you don't trust the dealer, you're going to pay a lot of money for something, take it out of the frame and look on the back. Another real key is there's no personal salutations. This says with best wishes, Dwight D. Eisenhower. If I go back, this says with best wishes, Jacqueline Kennedy. If it's not made out to somebody, and that's what the dedication is with the salutation, you should be suspicious. Somebody brought this to me and they said, I know it's real, I know it's real. Absolutely. I said, I know it's not real. Well, how can you tell from across the room? Well, I've seen dozens of them, and when you turn it over, Here's what it says on the back. This inscription on the reverse reads, "With best wishes, Dwight D. Eisenhower." This is a facsimile reproduction. Picture's not for sale, explains when it was copyrighted and who could reproduce it and how they came upon it too. But there's a lot of information on the back. We'll talk more about little indentations and things in just a little while as well. This is one of my favorites. This letter cost me a ton of money in my early days as a autograph dealer. It is a printed signature. It is signed by Harry Truman. The whole thing looks like it's handwritten, but there is no salutation on it. If it is, it's a general salutation. It says, "Dear friend," or "Dear my fellow American," or whatever. He put out a series of letters after he left office every month, and it was dated June, July, August, September. And he did them for many months, but they are reproduced. They're really good signatures, and you got to look at them under raking light, and you got to remember that if there's no salutation, there's no dedication to it, there's a good chance that it's not authentic. That was Harry Truman. I paid way too much for that because it was worth about $3, but I didn't know back in the day. But I learned to hurry, and now I'm sharing that with you as well. Printed signatures, books. I get calls on this one all the time, and years ago, or actually I still wander into bookshops and I ask about autographs and manuscripts, and everybody pulls out a copy of Grant's memoirs and wants to sell me an autographed copy of something signed by Ulysses S. Grant. This happens to be a leather-bound edition. There are many, many editions of this. Most of them is in a green cloth cover with a nice medallion on the front. I wrote a book called Bet You Didn't Know That, 101 Antique and Collectible Trivia Tips That Can Make You Rich, Famous, and the Hit of the Party. And I talked a little bit about this in the book, and I just explained that it wasn't authentically signed. Well, I got a book review from somebody in an organization that we all know that said I misrepresented it. I didn't talk about all the different editions. So there are many different editions. That person was absolutely right, but we were just talking about the signature and what the general values of these things are. So there you go. That's what it looks like. There are 2 volume sets. He actually wrote this while he was dying of throat cancer. And if you go to the first page, the first flyleaf there, past the first flyleaf, you'll see this engraving. This is a steel engraving, like the one we talked about before. It's on heavier stock. There's a little piece of tissue paper that covers it. You can see that right there. And if you rub your finger over Ulysses S. Grant and over his signatures, you'll have that feel of steel. So watch for that one. They can snip that out and put that somewhere. But this is the one that most people fall for. It says, "These volumes are dedicated to the American soldier and sailor, U.S. Grant, New York City, May 23rd, 1885. The book was published after he died, so this can't possibly be an authentic signature." He wrote that little sheet out, and then Mark Twain, who actually was his publisher and took care of him and his family, or his family after he died, put this book together. And he had lined up, Ulysses S. Grant was an extremely honest man, but he got surrounded by a whole bunch of crooks. There were all kinds of problems. And one publisher was going to publish his book, and Mark Twain knew that this guy would never pay the family the money from the royalties from Grant's memoirs. Mark Twain is the connection between Grant and this book. And these are not real. By the way, in the back of the second edition are all these letters. And these things have been cut up, snipped, framed. That little part at the bottom that talks to who the publisher is. There's a little printed part about Ulysses S. Grant, Brigadier General. These are actual letters, copies of actual letters, but not the authentic letter. Watch for these. They're all over the place, and they can get you in trouble if you're not careful. I wanted to see that again because we're going to look at something else. Sometimes you come across things that don't seem to make sense. I picked this up because the church in our town, there's a Methodist church in our town called St. John's, and I was going to pick it up and buy it as a little piece of paper, but on the back, I saw that it's the autograph of U.S. Grant in pencil. U.S. Grant, Lieutenant General, USA, or U.S. Army here. Autograph of Ulysses S. Grant, Commander of the U.S. Army, 1866. That's not in his hand, but the signature is. Oh, I was looking for the comparison. Take a look between that and that. That's a good one. And usually things, you can tell things in pencil. If you look at this under a magnifying glass or any pencil signature in a magnifying glass, it's really bits of graphite and carbon kind of scratched onto paper. You'll be able to see all of those little marks and all of those little indentations. There are little microscopes, and we have a microscope in our office that actually plugs into our computer and you can get really close and see incredible detail on these. But this is a pencil signature. Pencil signatures could be forged, but they're usually don't look like, if they're printed, you'll know they're printed. Red Cross is another famous book. Clara Barton started the Red Cross, and I get calls for this one all the time, and I kind of get maybe just ahead of myself sometimes, because someone will say, oh, look, it's signed by William McKinley. Well, no, it's not. William McKinley was president at the time. He did the dedication of the book and kind of did a little forward on it too, and you can see his signature at the bottom. If we compare that to a real William McKinley signature, this one on the left was not as president. The one on the right is a presidential era signature. The one on the left is authentic. The one on the right is not. If you see Clara Barton's book and it's got William McKinley's signature in it, you can rest assured that it's not signed by William McKinley. So I'm about to tell somebody it's just a regular book, and then the woman said to me, no, this one's signed by Clara Barton. So I flipped the page, and sure enough, it was this long, incredible inscription by Clara Barton, dated 1899. This was the real signature in Clara Barton's book. That one's pretty scarce. That one's pretty rare. We're not going to talk about values tonight, although we may touch on that a little bit later. But flip through pages. You'll find a lot of interesting books, a lot of things that are signed. And one of the greatest places, if you're looking for signed books because you like books or you like the autographed books and collect those, the book fairs. I'm talking about the ones, the book sales that the local libraries have. People bring things in, they have no idea. The people behind the counter are just trying to make a little bit of money. Some people are very knowledgeable and put the better books in certain areas. Sometimes they mark them as signed, but they're almost always a bargain. So do a little research, find out what's what. If you like them, that's great. Maybe you'll find another Clara Barton book, something signed by her. This is one of my favorite areas of fakes and forgeries and collectibles. I'm just going to look and see if we got any more questions that popped up. And no, we haven't. Hopefully everybody's doing all right here. And let me see where all my people are. Go. Got no hands up. Michael, you got your hand up. Did you have something? Just flash your hand up and down if you had a question. And Sharon's got her hand up. I want to see if anybody has questions, or they were just, and Karen's got her hand up. I want to see if anybody has questions, or you're just, you just hit the wrong button. Their hands are coming down. Karen's got her hand up, and Michael's got his hand up. Karen, I'm going to unmute you. I think I can do that. Karen, did you have a question?
You know, I think that I didn't understand the colors. I thought red was down, but red is up. I apologize.
Oh, I know. It's kind of counterintuitive, and we didn't make up the rules, but no worries. So that's
my
good.
My apologies. I'm enjoying it though. It's really great. Thank you for doing this.
You don't have to apologize. No worries. All right, good deal. Thanks. Good, Michael. I'm going to you, Michael. Where are you? I know you're here somewhere. There he is. Michael, I'm going to unmute you, buddy. See if you had a question. Do you have a question? Michael, are you there? Michael's not there. All right, I'm going to mute Karen again. I'm going to mute Michael again because I haven't heard from Michael. Don't want to leave anybody behind. And Kelly's got her hand up, or Kelly. I'm sorry, Kelly, are you there?
Oh, I'm here, but I'm the colorblind too. So
you're gonna have a heck of a time figuring out fakes and forgeries if you're colorblind.
I know. I'll work on that.
No worries, that's great. Thanks a lot. Okay, I'm gonna mute you there too. We're gonna keep going. Good. Okay, so we're picking up where we left off. This is one of my favorites, land grants. And a land grant is an official formal document that was issued by either a state, a commonwealth, or the federal government. And it was given, it's giving land, it's granting land or a land patent to someone, usually in lieu of money, for serving the country in some way or delivering something or providing some service. This one says by the president, U.S. grant, and it says by someone named Parrish, who's also the secretary. So they're really nice. They got a seal on them. They're very cool. There are some that are signed by Patrick Henry, by the Commonwealth, and Patrick Henry as the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And they used to sell for a good amount of money. At one point, the Commonwealth of Virginia said, hey, wait a minute, they're getting a lot of money for those. Let's take those back. And actually, one of the things that the Manuscript Society does is help people through their, we have a Replevin committee and a fund to help people fight to get documents that are rightfully theirs in order to keep them and not have them taken by the government. But the Commonwealth of Virginia they sent somebody out, and the marshals came out and the state police came out, and they started taking all these things. So now they're worth, like, you know, practically nothing, because if they show up in an auction somewhere and some poor slob is trying to sell it, someone knocks on their door and they take the document from them. So land grants from the Commonwealth of Virginia signed by Patrick Henry, be aware of that the Commonwealth claims that they own them. They're not taking the land back, they're just taking the document back. And I don't know whether they're taking them to think they're going to have a lot of money, but apparently they're not worth anything now because they're taking them back. So here's Ulysses S. Grant. It's a land grant. It says U.S. Grant. It says Parrish here too. But I want you to look at the signature of Parrish, and I want you to look at the signature of Grant. And if you'll notice, they have a lot of similar characteristics. Okay. Oh, now Randall says he can only see me. I'm not sure why that is. I'm going to make sure that somebody else can. Everybody, I want to see if you can see the screen with the U.S. Grant and Parrish on it. Just raise your hand for me too. I want to make sure that Randall's just having a little bit of a challenge. Okay, hands are going up. Okay, so people can see that. Randall, I'm not sure why you can only see me. There may be a toggle on your computer that allows you to see an alternate screen, or I may be down in the lower corner. You may have to drag your screen back in. And I'm going to take here and just take a couple of questions. Deborah says, are black lights useful? And Deborah, I'm going to cover that in just a little bit. They are very useful. I'm going to cover that. And what do you think about COA for autographs items sold in Las Vegas? Gail says, we're going to touch on that one too. So I see your questions, and I will not ignore you, but I'm going to temporarily put you on hold until we get a little further along. And we're going to answer all those in just a little bit. They're all great questions, by the way. So here's U.S. Grant, and here's this guy named Parrish. And if you look at the grant, that was the grant on the back of the St. John's Church signature, and that's Grant's signature. To me, it doesn't look the same, and it probably doesn't look the same to you. The G's different, the T's different. They're all at a different angle, but here's what I want you to do. If you have a document and you're not sure it's a land grant and you want to know if it's signed by the president or if it's signed by the secretary, because the secretary signed for the president, turn it upside down. And if you turn it upside down, stop looking at the letters. Don't try to read U.S. Grant or J. Parrish. Just look at the shapes of the curves. And if you look at the shapes of the curves, you're going to see that they're very, very similar. The angle's the same. The ink color's the same. The intensity of the ink, the width of the ink is the same. And the shapes and the squirrels and the swirls are all the same. And that's one indication that something is signed by a secretary on this. Now there's another one too. This doesn't actually work in this one. James Buchanan had a secretary named Leonard, and he was so good at this. If you look at that James Buchanan signature, not the one at the top, but the one at the bottom where it says by the president, by the secretary, that looks an awful lot like James Buchanan's real signature. And I don't have an example to show you, but Leonard decided he was going to try to make James Buchanan's signature, secretarial signature, look a lot like the real thing. And he did. But I'm going to make this real easy for you. There's another definitive way to do that. This is an Andrew Jackson land grant. The mouse nibbles are no extra charge. They're on vellum. Most of them are on vellum, and it's signed Andrew Jackson. And if you knew Andrew Jackson's signature, you know that doesn't look at all like Andrew Jackson's signature. But here's the way to remember this. There's a magic date in land grants, presidential land grants we're talking about. The magic date is 1832. Andrew Jackson was our 7th president. He was in from March 1829 to March 1837, 2 terms, right? And at the beginning of his 2nd term, I just think he got sick and tired of signing land grants. So he said, I'm not signing them anymore. And the secretary started signing them. I have never seen a land grant after 1832 that is authentically signed by the president. Now, here's the caveat, and here's the big disclaimer. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. Don't believe anything Brian says. I'm going to give you generalities. Everything is a generality tonight. There are probably always exceptions to the rule, but I can state that in the 40 years I've been doing this, I've never seen an authentic presidential land grant signed after 1832. They've all been signed by secretaries. So keep that in mind as we go. All right, let's see. Michael asks, is the person who wrote this the same person? Yeah, it is. So and you're absolutely right. So it's the same person that signed as a secretary, signed for the president. Good catch, good eye, Michael. All right, so that's it on presidential land grants. There's a presidential seal on them, and people say, well, if it's got a seal, it must be official. Well, here's a picture of a seal. This is a harbor seal, not a presidential seal. And I put this up here to remind you that just because I have a seal on it doesn't mean that it's authentically signed. I've seen some pretty good faked early manuscripts and documents, including some Button Gwinnett stuff, who is the rarest signer of the Declaration of Independence. One of the 56 signers was from Georgia. He died shortly after signing the Declaration of Independence in a duel, and a lot of his papers were burned in a fire. So they're very, very rare. They're extremely rare, although I've seen 3 of them in the past year, which is really kind of interesting. And I've seen about 6 fakes. But one person took a fake Button Gwinnett, not a contemporary, from way back when, and put a little wax seal on it to make it look like it was his. It was not. The seal was wrong, the time was wrong, the paper was wrong, the watermark was wrong, a lot of things were wrong with it. But remember, if there's a seal on it, that doesn't mean it's authentic. It might mean it's official, but it doesn't mean it's authentic. Okay, so with that in mind, we'll go on to my second favorite, fake autographs, and they're machine signed signatures. The auto pens is a generic term. It's kind of like Jello for gelatin or Band-Aid for bandages on your finger. Auto pen is a name of a machine, but they call them auto pens, and really it's a machine signed signature. So there's something called a Signa signer, and there was something called an auto pen. And it's a mechanical device about the size of a bread box. If you're too young to know what a bread box is, about the size of a small microwave oven, and it had a little hand that sticks out with a little knurled spot, and you put a pen in there and you did a little thumb screw to hold it in place, and there was a template that worked on a mechanical electric motor, and you put something underneath the pen, you stepped on the foot switch, the pen would come down, would draw the signature and lift itself up at the end. These are auto pen signatures of Jackie Kennedy and John F. Kennedy. Neither one is authentic. They're done with a real pen. So if you licked it or you used some solvent on it, the ink would actually run, but it doesn't mean that it's genuine. And I'm going to talk to you about what characters you can use to be able to figure out, so you can figure out what's what. And Michael said, so then the person who writes this is worth more. I guess so. Maybe he's known as a famous secretarial signer. We'll talk a little bit about values. Land grants that are not signed by presidents or signed by secretaries are collectible, but don't nearly have the value of an authentically signed signature by the President of the United States. And while they're president, usually documents signed while they're president, is worth more than before their term or after their term. So here's John F. Kennedy. It's an auto pen signature. Both of them are auto pens. We're going to talk a little more about that. Here's how you can tell one way to tell an auto pen. This is an Omar Bradley. He was a general in the U.S. Army. And he wrote a letter to Mr. John Evangelisti out of Dover, New Jersey. And it says, Mrs. Bradley and I are deeply grateful for your concern and good wishes during my illness. Thanks for your thoughtfulness. Omar Bradley. Mr. Evangelisti wrote to him again and got another letter. You can see both letters. These are 2 different letters on the left. So what I would do, and what I've done here as an illustration, is I've taken both of these letters and put them on my light table, a light that shines from underneath. And you can do it with a flashlight, or you can hold them up to the light. It will work. You take these 2 examples and you line them up together to see if they're 2 of the same pattern auto pens. If you look here on the upper left, you'll see they're almost lined up exactly. And if you look to the right, they are 2 signatures, one superimposed on the other on the light table. They match exactly. So one characteristic of an auto pen signature is it makes the same signature exactly the same way over and over and over again. On occasion, if the pen's not in there snug or the pen's put at an angle, there might be a slight variation, but for the most part, these are going to match up. So that's one indication. The problem with that is John F. Kennedy had multiple auto pens, and a lot of these people that had auto pens had more than one. The first use of the auto pen, the real first use of a president as president, was John F. Kennedy, but Eisenhower used an auto pen when he was at Columbia University, and there are examples of that. That was before Eisenhower became president. That's the first example that I know of the auto pen being used commercially in a variety of ways. So look for this. The problem here is you got to have 2 auto pens, and they got to be the same pattern. So when I'm doing authentications or we're doing work on appraisal work or things along those lines, I have a whole slew of these, and they're called exemplars, and they're examples of auto pens. And I just pull them out, we lay them out. Occasionally, if you want to build an auto pen file and you have auto pens, photocopy them onto a piece of clear plastic or some kind of acetate, and then you can use it as a template, lay it right on top, and see what's what. You can also measure them. Usually the lengths are going to be a little bit different in a real signature, but not necessarily in an auto pen. So that's one auto pen. Here's another example of 3 auto pens. This is Mattingly, Duke, and Young. This is Apollo 16, the next to the last Apollo mission. 2 out of the 3 guys walked on the moon. John Young actually flew the first space shuttle, and with a guy named Crippen. And this is all auto pen. And if you look at these, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the characteristics of an auto pen. Even pen pressure. They almost look like they're printed because the ink intensity is the same, because the machine puts the pen down, draws the signature out, and then stops and lifts the pen up. So if you look at Ken and Ken Mattingly, it starts, it stops, the pen comes up. Mattingly, it's drawn very diligently, and at the end it lifts right up. John Young, the beginning of the top of the J, boom, the point goes down, follows it around. There's a little bit of a chatter and a little bit of a shake in John Young's auto pen, probably because the pattern or the template either didn't get oiled or lubricated, or it started to wear a little bit. So sometimes you can see a tiny little shake like that. And same thing with Charlie Duke, all evenly written out. There was somebody in Houston that just cranked out auto pens. She sat in a room, and actually there's an article in the Pen and Quill Universal Autograph Collectors Club journal a while back, and they interviewed her. She said, "Oh yeah, that was my job. You know, the astronauts were busy. They were training. They were trying to be with their family. They were in space. They couldn't sign autographs like crazy. So she was the auto pen person." This, on the other hand, is not an auto pen, and I put this in here just as an example. This is called an insurance cover, and this is Neil Armstrong, Mike Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. Neil and Buzz were the first 2 people on the moon. Neil made the first step, as you may remember, or you may have read, and Buzz was the second person on the moon. Mike Collins orbited the moon and knitted a sweater while he waited for them to finish up. Not really. Don't tell him. Someone's going to call it. He didn't knit a sweater. No, he didn't knit a sweater. These were covers and a stamped envelope is called a cover, or a first day cover, if it was issued in the first day. And Neil, Buzz, and Mike got together and said, you know, if we don't come back, our autographs are probably going to be really valuable. So why don't we sign a bunch of these and give them to our family? And in case there's a problem, they'll be able to sell them for $1 gazillion a piece. These sell for a lot of money now. You know, Neil's no longer alive. Buzz and Mike still are. I worked with Neil for years on his museum, and he told stories about this, some very interesting stories. But that was their idea, to be able to save some of this and have something, so we're all set. Okay. Oh, Mike's saying, don't forget Jefferson's signing device. Excellent, Mike. I will certainly talk about that. And we saw that up in Boston at the Manuscript Society conference, and somebody actually donated one of the letters, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So thank you, Mike. I'll bring that up when we get towards the end. So I just wanted to finish up on auto pens here. So here are the tips: even pen pressure, even ink intensity, possibly shaky corners, abrupt endings because it lifts up, or a dot ending. There's no trail off. When you sign your name, you lift the pen off the paper, so it usually comes to a point. And exact match to patterns. And remember, there could be multiple patterns, so keep that in mind too. That could be a little bit of a challenge. There you go. Okay, Zoe, I see you got your hand up. I'm going to unmute you and see if you had a question, something I can help you with. Zoe, what do you got there? Anything I can help? Nope, I guess not. She just had her hand up. Bob Hopper, let me mute Zoe and come back to Bob Hopper, who may be back in Washington, or he may be hanging out on the shores of our Great Lakes. Bob, are you there? Not Bob.
Yes.
Hey, Bob, what's cooking? You had your hand up. You had a question or a thought?
I just pushed something by accident.
Oh, it's okay. No worries. I've been doing. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you soon. I want to hear how your seminar went that you ran up there a little bit too.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to mute you again, buddy. Here we go. Okay. And I'm going to keep going here. All right. So we're back to where we were. So that's it on auto pens. People will tell stories about how they swore they saw John F. Kennedy sign a copy of Profiles in Courage, and they'll bring it to me, and I'll look at it, and I'll show them the pattern, and I'll lay a template right over it, and they'll say, but I saw him do it. People don't always remember exactly what they saw. So when I walked him through it, I said, where were you? Well, I got invited to the White House. I was outside the Oval Office. I said, great. The door opened up, right? He said, yeah, and Kennedy was at his desk. I said, absolutely. I said, who took the book? He said, some guy in a suit with a black tie. I said, a Secret Service guy. He said, okay, great. I said, and he walked in, and then what happened? He goes, and then he brought it out and it was signed. I said, did the door close? And he went, yeah, the door did close. I said, so you didn't see Kennedy sign it? He said, no, but I would have sworn I did, but you're right, the door closed. So the Secret Service agent or the aide walked around the corner after the door closed into a little side room, put the book in the table, put the book on the table, pressed the button, the auto pen came down, went, signed John F. Kennedy or John Kennedy, lifted it up, opened the door, gave the guy the book, and never bothered the president. That's exactly what happens with the auto pens, and that's why the auto pens were there. So check it out. Don't take anybody's word for it. No offense to anybody, but if somebody said, I saw it, get a good story. I have a great Disney drawing story that I tell from time to time, and maybe we'll have time for it. If not, we'll tell it some other time in another seminar. All right, so here's the quiz. All right, quiz time. Is this an authentic Lady Bird Johnson signature? Is it a secretarial signature? Or is it an auto pen? So I'm going to narrow it down. It's not secretarial. It's either authentic or it's an auto pen. If you think it's an auto pen, raise your hand. If you think it's an original, leave your hand down. If you're asleep, we're assuming you think it's original because you didn't know. So take a look and see. We got a lot of hands going up. Hands are going up all over the place. Okay, and if you have your hand up, or you're thinking about putting your hand up, you're absolutely right. This is an auto pen signature. Look at how the Y ends. Now, the only thing that's a little different is the ink intensity at the Y and Lady is not the same, but everything else is the same. If it's slowly drawn, even pen pressure, except for the Y, it's a little bit of a trick there. But when we get to the end, you can see that he stopped at the end of the Y. The D and Bird, the end of the D is stopped. The J in Johnson is a little bit shaky, so is that big loop, but it looks drawn. This is a secretarial signature of Lady Bird Johnson and not authentic. Great job. Good job. You can put your hands down and we'll move on to the next thing. So we've talked about some fakes. We'll talk more about them in a bit. But let me talk a little bit about some real stuff and how you might go about authenticating something. This says Executive Mansion, October 17th, 1861, to a Major Ramsey, and you can maybe be able to read the text, but it's got the signature of A. Lincoln at the bottom. And I'll tell you more about the letter in a second. This is the entire leaf, and this would be called an integral leaf. It's probably quarto in size overall, but it's an octavo. That's the size of the portion of the letter that's lined that has it. And in 1861, they had lined paper. Wove paper was being used then. You can see the normal folds. There's no other marks on it, a little bit of dirt on it. That would be normal for the time. If I get a little closer, here's what I want you to look at Lincoln. And there are three, I call this the three-tier approach to Abraham Lincoln. There are a lot of Lincoln forgeries out there. And a guy named Cozy did a lot of them, and a guy named Weisberg did a lot of them. Some of them are more contemporary, and some of them were of Lincoln's period or shortly after he passed away. What they didn't get when they wrote his name was they didn't understand that Lincoln wrote on three planes. And I like this letter. It's a perfect letter to show this as an educational example, is that blue line that runs right under A. Lincoln. You'll see that the A is below the line. The LINCO is on the line, or really close to the line, and the LN is above the line. So there's three levels that Lincoln signed on, and almost all of his letters that are signed A. Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's a little trickier, A. Lincoln, the A is at the bottom shelf, the Lincoln's in the Linco is in the middle shelf, and the LN is at the top shelf. Look for those. That's a classic example of an authentic signature. Now, the other place you want to go if you're going to do research, and this is how people, part of the authentication process, is you go to the library. That's the library in one of our conference rooms in our office. And there's a book on the shelf called The Collected Works of Abraham Lincoln. It's edited by Basler. It was put together by Rutgers press, and there's a lot of volumes. And every letter they could find, whether it was in private hands or in public hands, or they saw a photocopy of it somewhere, is in this book. So you can go to a particular date. Here's October 17th, and it says, Dear Major Ramsey, the lady bearer of this says she has 2 sons who wish to work. Set them at it if possible. Wanting to work is so rare a merit that it should be encouraged. Yours truly, A. Lincoln. And it explains that it's an ALS. It explains where the letter is. It explains that the bearer could not be identified, but it also talks a letter to Ramsey and a Mrs. Buckley, a widow of 6 children, may have appealed to Lincoln for a second time for aid. So there's a lot of information in Basler, and you can find, it used to be hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a set. Now there's so many out there that you can find them in a variety of places, A-Books or Amazon, or book dealers will sell them as sets. I think I have 3 sets in our library. We donate a couple of them every year when we come across them to other libraries. But it's a great place. It's called Basler, and I'll tell you more about Basler and something that was also interesting. So since we're talking about machine signatures, Jefferson had a signing device as well. And in essence, it was a mechanical device that when he wrote, there was another pen on the other side of the table that actually followed his movements. And there are a lot of those letters out there, and Jefferson letters are tough to figure out because it's so done. And there are some characteristics, again, pen pressure is one of them. How often the pen got re-inked is another one. Up in Boston, we were there, we saw the original letter, we saw this other letter that went with it, and we saw not that particular actual device, but there are many of those devices out there. Jefferson was brilliant when it comes to inventing those kind of things. So thanks for bringing that up, Mike. And it's a good example of that too. So here we go. Here's the profiles and courage that we talked about. This is actually an authentic signature, but I put this in here because I just thought it was interesting. If you look at the inscription, you can see that some of those letters have been written over. And when we looked at this, they weren't written over by Kennedy. They were just so lightly done. And the challenge here was, this was in a dealer's catalog at one point, and it was probably 25 years ago. I don't know if that dealer's even still around. But it was written, the description was sign, profiles, and courage, dedication, strengthened in another hand. Now, that sounds really good. Wouldn't you want something that's strengthened? Strengthened in another hand, we probably would have said somebody wrote over it and probably devalued it by a good amount. So sometimes people will write over things thinking they're making it better. You're not making it any better. It's kind of like shellacking a Babe Ruth signed baseball, or laminating an autograph, a manuscript, or a historical document. Don't do that kind of stuff, as we say. All right, but I just put that in there just for fun. Let's see, sounds like a Babe Ruth signature. Oh, Michael put that in there. Here's the thank you. You bet, Michael. On the sweet spot of the ball, Michael says. Yes, it's on the angle. There you go. Okay, good deal. Thank you, Michael. Good point. All right, moving right along. Here's another piece. Sometimes you're going to find great autographs on tiny little things. This is this is like the size of a business card, and it's really an aviation license from the FAI, which is a French aviation society. The guy's name was Bob Ewart. He lived in Philadelphia, and it's got his signature on it and his picture standing in front of his aircraft, and it's signed by Wilbur Wright, who was the chairman of this particular organization. A great piece. It's perfect association. Orville Wright, it's flying, there's a picture of an airplane, it's the United States of America, it's a French organization. It's really, really a neat piece. Threw it in there just to give you an idea of some good signatures. By the way, Wilbur is the rare signature. Wilbur died long before Orville. Orville claimed that Wilbur died because of all the fights they had with Glenn Curtis and copyright infringements and things like that. But Wilbur Wright's signature is more rare and definitely more valuable than Orville Wright in a comparable situation. All right. So the question is this the good stuff? This is signed Jefferson Davis. It's a great letter, good content. Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederate States of the United States of America. And if you look close, you'll see the signature right at the bottom. If I gave you another signature of Jefferson Davis that was authenticated and we knew was actually real, it would look really close to this one. But here's the key giveaway. His wife, Verena, signed tons of letters, and these are referred to as Verena letters, because his wife's name was Varina. And the way you know that Varina, V-A-R-I-N-A, did it was she always put a dot after the S in Davis. And if you look right down there, just to the right and below the S, you'll see that little period. That was her way of saying this was a secretarial letter and not him. And big difference in value, but certainly collectible. And people that collect Jefferson Davis also like to collect at least one Varina letter, just because it makes it a little interesting. And Mike says you're right. Wife wrote it. Very good. Okay, this is another one of my favorites. This was a souvenir of the aeronautic program at Atlantic City in 1919. There's a lot of really neat signatures on this. Santo Dumont, Glenn Curtis, Admiral Perry, Thomas Edison, Earl Ovington, James Baldwin, Charles McGlidden, and there's a guy named Henry Woodhouse here too. You can see that Henry Woodhouse signature. I'm gonna move this out of the way so I can see it's in here. I don't know if I got it there or not. I don't know if I got it there. Hold on, there's more signatures. I don't see what you guys see, so I'm just going to move them over. There we are. Curtis, Perry, Santo Dumont, Thomas Edison, Earl Ovington, and Henry Woodhouse. The only authentic signature on this program is Henry Woodhouse, and nobody knows who Henry Woodhouse is. Maybe some of you do because you know about some of the famous forgers. Henry Woodhouse was quite a character. He was a guy that would look at music copy and find out when the copyright was up, and he would renew the copyright once it expired because the artist or the songwriter didn't get on it in time, and then he would sue people because they played the music that now he had the rights to. So that's just the beginning of Henry Woodhouse's life. Henry Woodhouse was going to put together this big aviation program and this big event, and he said, I'm going to sell thousands of these programs with the signatures of famous people on there. So he wrote to Thomas Edison. He said, Mr. Edison, I want you to come and sign like 100 of these things. And Edison said, I'm busy inventing stuff. Leave me alone. Earl Ovington was flying, and Admiral Perry was exploring, and Curtis was in battles with the Wright brothers. None of these guys wanted to sign, so he went, what the heck? I'll sign. So he signed all of those signatures, and there's tons of aviation stuff out there that have signatures of everybody but authentic signatures. And the only, like I said, the only real one on this one is Henry Woodhouse's signature, and he's not worth much. So I have a picture of Henry Woodhouse if you want to see what he looks like. That's a close-up right there. But the others aren't any good, but Henry's is. So here's a picture of Henry Woodhouse. If you see him, don't buy any autographs from him. All right, one more of the good stuff. This is a pencil-signed signature, and if you look at this, you can see where it came from. You can see who it's written to, and you can see that it's a very thoughtful person. It's thanking someone for a beautiful little cross, but owing to Mrs. Hutton's absence from your attorney when she went on and on and on. When you open it up, this is who signed it. It's a pencil-signed signature of Helen Keller, and this one's authentic. And one way you can tell Helen Keller autographs from the fake ones is she had actually almost like a washboard that she wrote on, and it was a piece of wood that someone had routed out these grooves, and she would rub her fingers over the paper to get that groove feel, and then she knew where to put her pencil. And she didn't write with a pen because the ink would run and she wouldn't be able to feel that or touch that. But she had very good tactile skills, and she wrote this all out. This is written by Helen Keller. Great letter, and we're going to talk a little bit about writing how do people write these up in catalogs and how appraisers would write them up, just to give you a little different background. But that's a great Helen Keller piece. That was one of my favorite letters. I use that a lot in some of my educational seminars. We're talking about kids about writing letters and overcoming adversity and things like that. This was an interesting letter, and I put this in here because my friend Joe Rubenfein, who recently passed away, was a great mentor to me. And years ago, this letter came our way, and we looked at it, and I wasn't quite sure, so I sent it down to Joe, and Joe looked at it, and we pondered over it for a couple of days. It's got Ben Franklin's signature on the back. It's written to John Jay. The content is extraordinary, and we could not find it anywhere. It would have been an unpublished, discovered letter. It would have been worth a ton of money, and I was trying to authenticate it, and I had a problem with it, and I sent it to Joe, and Joe had the same problem too. Now, when authenticators authenticate, they either say it's real, it's not real, or I just can't make a determination. So, and typically when an appraisal, an authentication is done, it's not just a certificate of authenticity on an important letter. like this or any other important letter, there's an authentication report. What was done, how it was done, how the paper was analyzed. Was it put under black light? And I'll get back to black light in just in a second here. Everything of this letter looked right. The dates, the times, the autograph, the signature, the ink, but the paper wasn't right. Now the paper was around, but it's not the kind of paper that Ben Franklin would have used to write a letter to John Jay. It would have been like how do I say this? It would have been like a president of the United States that respected other leaders writing a letter to that leader on toilet paper. You just wouldn't do it. You would write it on an appropriate piece of stationery to show that, to show respect and to show that it was an important letter and to show you had an interest in it too. And this was paper that was available. It was French paper. It was considered cheap paper. It might have been the only paper that Franklin had access to when he was trying to get the letter off to John Jay, but it wasn't the kind of paper that he would have written on. So the determination that we made was undetermined. So we couldn't say no, we couldn't say yes, but we could say why we had concerns. And that happens a lot in authentication. Here's another one that is kind of interesting. It's about the size of a postcard, and it's written out to Mr. Frederick K. Tompkins, who was with the Freedman's Aid Society, which was an organization in England during the war, and they kept coming over to see how the freed slaves were doing and to figure out the war effort. And if, as you know, in the Civil War, everybody was worried about were the British going to get involved and were they going to side with the North or with the South. If they sided with the South, the outcome would have been substantially different. If they sided with the North or just laid low, like they ended up doing most of the ways, then that was okay. So if anybody came over from England with any kind of clout, they got an audience with the president and pretty much anybody. They got a free railway pass. They got all kinds of stuff. So 2 of these railway passes were given out on the day. And on the back, you'll see it says transportation free, E. Stanton, Secretary of War. Below it, it says, I heartily commend Dr. Tompkins' object and bid him Godspeed in it. A. Lincoln, February 27th, 1865. Below that, it says, pass Mr. Tompkins through all the armies of the United States, U.S. Grant, City Point, Virginia, which is just south of D.C., March 2nd, 1865. And you can see the close-up signature. And if we're talking about signatures, you can see that same deal, the I-N-C-L and the O-N's just a little bit higher, the 3 planes there too. And when we went digging into Basler, we found that it was in Basler, but it was in the back. It wasn't part of the normal where you would normally see it. And nobody knew where the original was. This one popped up. So there's good stuff out there. You'll find it. But again, anytime you come across anything, assume that it's not real until proven otherwise. Back to the Helen Keller. We just want to talk a little bit about description. Someone asked for this when we first put this together. Here might be a good dealer catalog description. The one thing, and you can read through it, the one thing that makes it a dealer catalog is obviously they're trying to sell it, whether it be in a dealer or an auction catalog. At the bottom, it says, perfect for framing, a wonderful conversation piece, a superb and scarce item. This one won't last call today. And that is all true. I don't think any of that is to be disputed. But when you're appraising something or you're authenticating something, you want to be a little more objective than that too. So this is how an appraiser might write the description, explaining some of the flaws and some of the conditions and some of the light soiling on the first page. The washboard guidelines are present, those kind of things too. Now, if you want to know how to write descriptions and you think you want to be a cataloger, then here's where you need to go. You need to go to the Manuscript Society resources page. And the Manuscript Society many years ago created criteria for describing manuscripts and documents. They worked with a lot of scholarly people, archivists and curators, and people in the field, dealers as well. And it's a handy checklist of all the abbreviations that are used. You can go to manuscript.org to be able to get it. You'll be able to see how that works too. That's a good place. And people always ask me as we kind of wrap up a little bit about research and valuation. There are the price, value, and cost are 3 different things. The price is what somebody is asking for that particular item. The value is actually what it's worth. So somebody can ask anything. Not too long ago, Disney VHS, Black Diamond VHSs, which are I don't know if you know what a VHS is, but back in my day, that was new technology. And all the Disney movies were on VHS cassette tape years ago. and somebody wanted $50,000 for them. Once somebody saw one being offered for $50,000, everybody put them up there for $10, $20, $30,000. That's not their value. That was an asking price. The value turned out to be nothing or close to nothing because nobody really wanted to buy them. So value is the actual value, and the cost is what it would cost to replace it. So if appraiser's doing an appraiser, the price might be what somebody's asking. The value changes depending upon the purpose or the intended use of the appraisal. So someone's making a charitable contribution, the value is fair market value. Someone is trying to sell in a hurry because of a bankruptcy, then you have to use orderly liquidation. If the DEA comes in and raids your house and they're selling it tomorrow, that's forced liquidation. If you want to cover it for insurance, you want estimated replacement costs, and you probably do that or replace it in a dealer's retail market. So every appraisal has a purpose and an intended use. If you're looking for appraisers, make sure they're trained, tested, and with expertise in the field of autographs, silver, fine art, whatever it happens to be. And there's a uniform standards of professional appraisal practice and the professional appraisal societies. Anybody you use for any of that kind of work should be members of all those. If you're doing your own research, markets, go to the auction market. There are a lot of places you can find auction sales. You can go to the retail market, look at dealers' catalogs online or hard copy. You can go to the wholesale market, we'll see where things are being grouped. And you can go to the auction sales of government auctions. I remember as a kid in the back of Popular Mechanics who would say, Jeep's $35, and we'd always try to get in on those auctions. So some of those are for sale auctions. If you're researching online, auctions, retail, shops, American Book Prices Current is a subscription database that lists a lot of books and manuscripts that have sold at auction. Rare Book Hub is another one like that. That is auction sales. ABE Books, that is a retail site like Alibris and Biblio where dealers put manuscripts and books up there. You can see what the story is, and I've just put my email up there if you have any questions or thoughts that I might be able to answer for you. This is what American Book Prices Current looks like if you're doing research. We used to have a column in manuscripts that was called Auction Highlights, and we had a great editor that went through and picked out some of these things too. We no longer have that column, but you can find them through other sources. American Book Prices Current, run by Kathy Lieb, is one that might work out well. The other one is Rare Book Hub, again, a subscription service. That was a search for Helen Keller, and it lists the, you can see, I think I got my pen here. I don't know, don't worry about it. It lists the auction house and what it sold for, and if it's sold, and what the estimated price was. And if you click on any of the highlighted items, it explains exactly what that particular piece was. All right. So here's some thoughts. You need to know your history. Can help you identify fakes and forgeries. The camera really didn't come into existence until around 1838 and wasn't really used extensively to 10 or 20 years after that. So if you have a signed photograph of George Washington, it's not real, right? If you have a letter that was typed by Abraham Lincoln, it's not real because the typewriter wasn't around then. Ballpoint pens came out in 1888, but they weren't really used or considered classy or quality until the 1940s. Felt tips pen, 1960s. So, you know, early baseball players that supposedly signed their tobacco cards in a felt tip pen, I don't think so. Pulp paper came around in the 1840s, and envelopes in the US weren't started until 1845. You're going to see a Thomas Jefferson letter out there where he's applying for a loan and trying to get some money, and it comes with an envelope with a free franc, a signature in the upper right-hand corner of the envelope. It was published many years later, printed many years later, created by a bank to help them promote their loan department. But in 1845, when envelopes first started, was long after Thomas Jefferson was around. So knowing those kind of things and having some kind of historical timeline is going to be important. We're getting towards the end, but I want to let you know that the most calls that I get every day, literally every day, somebody calls with a copy of the Declaration of Independence. The one on the left is an example of the Dunlop copy. That's the one that you heard sold for $8 million that somebody found behind a picture at a flea market like 25 years ago. It sold for $8 million, it sold for $4 million, it sold for $8 million. And this one goes around and around. But as you'll notice, there are no signatures at all on it. The one on the right is a reproduction of the original one, and it might be something like the Stone copy, which William Stone created these, and it might be something like the Force copy, which came after that. So there's a lot to know about Declaration of Independences. There's anesthetic copies, there's Tyler copies, there's all kinds of things. And might be a good webinar for the next time. If that's something you're interested in, let us know. I'll bring it back to the board. We have a meeting coming up in October to talk about what we're doing next. But think about what might be an interesting webinar for you related to manuscripts and things that the Manuscript Society might do for you. All right, final thoughts as we wrap up here. Your certificate of attendance, you get one. Some people are taking this for continuing education credits in their appraisal business, their authentication business, in their antiques and collectibles business, or just education in the field if you're an attorney or an accountant and you deal with these kind of things, or financial planner. So you're going to get an email from me. It's going to be automatically sent to everybody who was on this call. And as long as you're on it for most of the time, it'll be attached to that email. Look for it. It's a PDF. You can open it up, download it, save it, send it to your organization to show your CEUs. Here's the deal on follow-up handouts. I got a 22-page handout for you that's going to support this presentation. It's on the Manuscript Society resource page. It's in the members only section. So if you're a member, you'll be able to get right to it. I haven't put it up yet, but give me a couple of days. It's going to include a compiled list of the most common fakes and forgeries. It's 22 pages long. It's not pictures, but it's got all of the things that we talked about here tonight and a bunch of other stuff on top of that. You can watch this webinar anytime if you dare. If you're a Manuscript Society member, we're going to put it up on the resource page again, so you can watch it anytime you want. If you are an Inner Circle member at National Appraisal Consultants, we're going to post that up, and you're going to have that. You're going to have access to that as well as an Inner Circle member or as a Manuscript Society member. So here's the deal. What, you're not a Manuscript Society member? You can join right now at manuscript.org, M-A-N-U-S-C-R-I-P-T, no S, manuscript.org. Great organization. We got lots of publications. Resources online are great. We got an annual conference or a convention that you want to be part of. Check it out. Again, the Manuscript Society, with the folks that put this together, allowed me to present this. I'm honored to do it and delighted there. If you're a professional appraiser and you want to have access to the website and tons of other stuff, go to innercircleappraiser.com. And that's the deal. We're all wrapped up. I'm going to open this up to questions. If you have questions or thoughts, let me look at all my things. Oh, use of black lights. Would you scroll? Oh, would the scrolls be the same? Hang on. Would there be a seal on the paper? Hang on. So Michael's asking about, Michael, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to unmute you, assuming we can unmute you if I can find out where you are. You're in here somewhere, and you can ask me that question. Michael, I'm going to where is it? Yeah, Michael, I'm going to unmute you for a second. There you go. Thanks. Did you have a, tell me what your question was, because I didn't quite, you said, would there be a seal on the paper? Go ahead. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I think I've unmuted you. I have unmuted you. Maybe I didn't. Hold on. I'm trying again. Yeah, I've unmuted you, Michael. I'm sorry. And you had a question. So I'll say, would there be a seal on the paper? Are you talking about a watermark? Because watermarks are on paper too, and we have the 3 great volumes of watermarks. You can look for when the paper was made. Will help a lot. Sometimes seals on the paper, I'm not sure if they're which ones you're talking about, but I'm sorry. So if you want to just write me another one, I'll see if I can do here too. I'm gonna mute you for a second. Zoe's got her hand up. I'm gonna go to Zoe and see if you had a question. Do you have a question, Zoe?
Hi, Brian. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
My question is, what is the situation in other parts of the country regarding this California, the autograph law?
Great. And you sent me an email today about that, and I didn't get a chance to respond, but I'll certainly respond here. There was a law passed in a while back, actually several years ago, that autographs need to include a certificate of authenticity to go along with it. Is that what you're referring to?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. That has changed a bit, and I think what you referred me to was a website or a discussion back in 2016. That law has changed. I don't know exactly where it is now, but they've backed off a lot on that too. I had discussions with some of our senators and folks here in New Jersey about doing the same thing for sports memorabilia. What happened in California when they created the law for fine art is art forgeries quadrupled that year, because if you're going to fake the art, you might as well fake the certificate of authenticity.
Right.
So the real challenge with any of that is who's going to enforce it. And the reason New Jersey didn't go with it, I said, well, who's going to pay? He goes, well, you're an authenticator. You could do that. I said, well, who's going to pay me? They said, well, what do you mean? I said, I don't do this. This is how I feed my children. I said, I can do that, and I can go through all that and check their certificates of authenticity. I said, but you got to find a way to fund this. So that means you got to charge the dealers money to be able to sell this stuff, or charge a fee for a certificate of authenticity that goes to the state. So there's a fund to support that. So I think the law has changed. I know you're worried about shipping books in and out of California without certificates of authenticity. Is that your main concern? Autograph book?
No, it's not so much books now, because of the law that did change. It did start to protect the books, the manuscript.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. It's mostly the sports memorabilia and the entertainment.
Right. And if I was to make a general sweeping statement about sports autographs and entertainment autographs, that 80% of everything I see and 80% of everything on the market is probably not authentic. The challenge is, if you're going to, I'm just picking on Betty Davis. If I get a $25 Betty Davis autograph or a $15 Maury Amsterdam autograph, no one's going to chase somebody down and sue them for $15. So what happens in that world is, I think it just kind of gets ignored. And what dealers are saying, what the not good dealers, and there's plenty of good dealers, are saying, well, there's no reason it shouldn't be real, and how much time should I spend on a $15 autograph? So I don't know the answer to that, except to be extremely careful on what you're buying or selling. And if you're going to, I know you're an appraiser. If you're going to be an appraiser, is it safe for you to make an extraordinary assumption, which is the term in appraising, that says, hey, I'm assuming this is authentic, but it might not be. The best stuff, you should take some time with. The $15 and $20 items, nobody really cares. And I don't mean that in a negative way. eBay doesn't want anything to come out on their offered on their site without a certificate of authenticity. But anybody that's going to fake an autograph can fake a certificate of authenticity. Does that help a little bit?
It does. Thanks.
Good deal. Great. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to mute you, and I'm going to Stuart. Stuart, I'm unmuting you. Stuart, I see your hands up. What can I do for you? No, Stuart. Stuart's not. Yeah, go ahead, Stuart. How are you?
How are you? What would be the average cost to authenticate, just say, a letter?
I think it depends on the letter, and I can speak to my rates, but there are other organizations out there that have a reputation for being an authentication firm, and they have a list, and if you find those, they will tell you sometimes it's 25, 50, 100. I have a minimum, since you asked, I have a minimum fee of $250 for any kind of authentication. And the reason for that is because I keep a copy of it, I write a report, I keep it in there forever. And what's going to happen, and almost always happens, is someone down the road will sell that to somebody else, and then somebody will sell it to somebody, unscrupulous person, that will take that certificate of authenticity and that report and put it with a fake autograph and then sell it. And then I get a call 6 years later that says, hey, you dirty son of a gun, and saying nasty things about my mama, that I didn't authenticate this. Well, I pull all my records out and find out that that wasn't the same piece. So somewhere along the line, things get switched. So my records are more intense, and I typically don't do common autographs. I just finished up a potential authentication or not of a button Gwinnett, and it cost that person $650 to learn that we shouldn't go on to the next phase. Sometimes I can instantly look at it. People call what Declaration of Independence is all the time. We talk to them on the phone. We talk to them about them on our radio show. But they're all over the place. I am probably the most ridiculously high-priced person in the field. So my suggestion is find other sources where you can go. But if it's an important historic letter, I mean, geez, some of the letters that you've seen, the God letter that sold at Christie's by Albert Einstein, or the button Gwinnett that sold not too long ago, people that would do the authentication on that would probably invest thousands of dollars to make sure it's actually authentic. I don't know if I helped you much, Stuart, but a great question.
Can I ask one other question?
Sure, man. You got the floor, buddy.
Okay. Auction houses.
Right.
Some of the major auction houses, or ones that have a lot of auctions, can auction houses be trusted?
Well, yeah, I think they absolutely can. and there are auction houses that should not be trusted, but I think auction houses can be trusted. I think auction houses are in it for the long haul, are going to, if they're going to talk about authenticate an item, they're going to back it up. If they're talking about clear title, they're going to back it up. I know there's 4 pages of disclaimer in the front of every auction catalog out there, and there are the reasons for that. But I would find auction houses where you know the people who are in charge of that particular department, and have a reputation for doing things the right way, and that when there's a problem, you're going to hear about it, and they're going to make good on it. So to make a sweeping statement that they all can be trusted or they all can't be trusted, no, there are some that I love, and there are some that I wouldn't go near, and that this is kind of out of scope. But I imagine I'll see you in Chicago, and we can have a drink and talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, good deal. Thanks. You put me on the hot seat. I'm not answering that one, my friend. All right, I'm going to mute you, Stuart. I'm going down the list to see who else I missed here. If your hand's up, I'm going to track you down. I can't. Dana's got her hand up, but I can't give you I can't unmute you, Dana. So you're going to have to write me a note. I'm going down to other hands that are up. I see some people have questions up. Oh, I got a lot of the thing here. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna answer some. Let's see. Seals are the same. Joan says, my grandfather worked for Thomas Edison for many years. It's family history that Juan's handwriting mimicked Edison so much that Juan signed for Edison payroll checks and other documents. Juan Caballero. Thank you, Joan, for sharing that too. And actually, I'll think of his name right now. I was just down there to see him. Leonard DeGraff is the curator and archivist down there at the Edison Historic Site. I will actually be seeing him next week, and I will be happy to kind of share that story. He may know that story, and if not, I think you're going to get a call from someone at the Edison Library. That's a very cool story. Thanks so much. Monica says, what's the deal with Monica? I'm going to talk to you when we have empanadas at your house and some sangria or a beer or something about that, and I will answer that question when we get together. All right, so I'm not going to do that one. I'm not going to do that one here, Monica, just so you know. Mike says eBay has fakes that are unchecked, and that's true. eBay is trying very hard to prevent fake autographs from being out there. But like anything else, some are going to sneak through. I actually had the director of security for eBay in my office a few years back, and we had a big discussion about that. Michael said, so this is for the USPAP and record keeping. Actually, Michael, you can use this as continuing education credits for not USPAP, but for your appraisal society if you choose to do that. And the USPAP record keeping rule, USPAP deals with appraising, not with authentication. So when I talk about my authentication reports and all the records I keep, it really has nothing to do with uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. Although if we talk about values after we authenticate, then certainly that would be part of the record keeping rule. All right, at what point would you invoke a lab to test paper, etc., do a more depth analysis of the document, Dana asks. All right, she said, sorry, I have audio issues with the webinar, I had to switch back. Okay, so Dana, it's a good question. I think there's a lot that you'll be able to do based just upon this webinar, and people who would do it without the scientific testing. They can actually identify ink and how long it's been on the paper based on microscopic ink migration, how far the molecules move. But what we didn't talk about, and we'll talk about in an advanced seminar, is identifying the paper. The paper has watermark, type of paper, where the paper was made, how the ink goes on paper. Back to the blacklight, all the Hitler forgeries were done on paper that was treated, and so were some of the Mormon forgeries, as I recall, and Ken Rendell had a lot to do with that, where the paper was treated so the ink would go onto the paper appropriately. Modern ink on old paper has a tendency to feather out and spread out and not stay in one place on the paper. The paper was treated, and when Ken put a blacklight underneath on that paper, it had fluoresced because it had been treated. Blacklight is used a lot in art, in fine art, authentication and identification to see how much touch-ups or in-painting has been on a particular painting. There's shortwave light and there's long-wave black light. Use them both. Remember, don't look directly at the light. It's very damaging to your eyes. Do it in a dark room, and it will show certain aspects. If something's been written over, if something's been erased, if ink has been changed, if a document a signature's been added, sometimes that'll show up with black light. Okay, in general, how does strengthening impact value? I see a lot of traced over signatures in estates with those with dementia. And if there's signatures traced over like a Babe Ruth signature, it pretty much destroys the value, Deborah. Very, very little value if something's been laminated or written over, as you say, strengthened in another hand. Okay, I hope that helps. I understand values of antiques are taking a hit over the past several years. Is also this case with autographs. I know generalizations are difficult to handle anyway. So Brian says that too. Yeah, in furniture, and Leon Kastner, my business partner, is the furniture guy. The old word is brown is down and mid-century modern is going through the roof. Antiques are down primarily, and collectibles and Hummels and collector plates and even, you know, good crystal like Waterford crystal. There's so much of it on the market. Everybody's downsizing. I think the best of the best in every field will always do well. The best automobiles, the best fine art, the best historical documents, the best manuscripts, the best autographs in sports or world leaders or in science or in medicine or in literature or in rare books. The best of the best always seem to hold value and do really well. It's the next tier down where everything seems to be taking a hit. I got out of dealing autographs full-time probably in 1986, but I keep my nose in it, being an autograph and manuscript and historical document and rare book appraiser. But I think it's not what it used to be. I think the heyday of autograph is down. General collecting. There was an article in the New York Times not too long ago about how selfies are now the thing. If people were to get autographs of somebody famous, you'd want to have an autograph and say, look, I got an autograph of Joe Namath. Now you just want to take a selfie with Joe Namath and say, look, I got a selfie with Joe Namath. So times have changed. Things are different. There's less letters being written because of emails and other ways to do that. But I think the best historical documents will always do well. People aren't making Button Gwinnett signatures anymore, and they're still collectors of signers of the Declaration of Independence, of first editions of Gone with the Wind and of The Great Gatsby. So I think autographs have taken a hit like just about everything else, but I think the best of the best is pretty strong. Great. Okay. Thank you, Dana. Let's see if there's anybody else. Is anybody else? Al, I'm going to put Al's got his hand up. I'm going to unmute Al. Al, you still with us? Al is the president of the Manuscript Society, who is doing a heck of a job keeping the organization running smoothly and efficiently. And thank you, Al, for allowing me to do this tonight. What can I help you with?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you, and so can everybody else.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great job. This is fantastic. I do have a question. Let me ask, do you ever see forgeries of Civil War soldiers' letters? For example, a letter supposedly written by a survivor of Pickett's charge, written right after the battle, in which he's describing, you know, the carnage to a friend. I mean, that would be a bad letter, but do you see those sorts of things, Paul? Yeah,
I do. You know, and you'll see, and they're available. A lot of Civil War letters and soldiers and accounts of famous battles are very collectible. And although these aren't people that are names you would recognize the name, the battle. We see a lot of Confederate letters where they say, we saw the General Lee, as in General Lee, ride by today, and he stopped to talk to us, and he just looked like an amazing person on his horse. Or we saw General Washington today, came through Gettysburg and spent some time with us. Or, you know, again, the Pickett's charge is a great example of that. Those kind of letters are extremely historically significant and have great value from a historic standpoint and a collector standpoint too. So I do see those from time to time. They're few and far between, but they're really amazing letters. And to me, they're the most special letters, or letters to back home explaining what it was like and how much they miss being home, or how they fought against a cousin or a brother because they were on a different side from the north or the south. So really wild and important stuff, Alan. I think that's a great point and a great question. So yeah, we do see them. I think they continue to do well, and I think they will always continue to do well. All right. Did that help?
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Alan. Thanks again for that too. All right. Let's see if I got anybody else that I missed. I think I got them all. We're about ready to wrap it up. We've been almost 75 minutes here. So I want to thank you all for being part of it too. If you have any questions, I'm going to bring you back to the places you can go. Again, manuscript.org is the place to become a member and to check some things out too. appraisers, you can go to Inner Circle Appraiser, find out a little more about that. Thanks for joining us. Let me know, because you're going to get an email. Respond to the email. Let me know what you want to see the next webinar that's hosted by the Manuscript Society. And I might be doing it, or there might be somebody else that has a great topic. And I'm so glad you could join us tonight. You all be well. Have a good night, and be safe. We need updated reference books. Charles Hamilton. Okay. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. We'll talk about some reference books next time around. Good night, y'all. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.